This episode is brought to you by Sterling Soap Company. How often do you think about your soap? Well, if you answered, not much, maybe you should. You see, a lot of what passes for soap in stores is technically not soap, according to the FDA's definition. It's full of lab-created chemicals and detergents because, well, it's cheaper to make. Now, what if you could buy natural soap made from natural ingredients like tallow, palm oil, coconut oil, and scented with essential oils, and for just a little more than you'd pay for grocery store soap? Sterling Soap is 100% natural, and with a wide variety of bath soaps, shave soaps, beard balm, lotions, and cologne, there's a product and a scent for just about everybody. Check them out for yourself at sterlingsoap.com. That's STIRLING soap.com. Are you a hockey fan? Then you'll love Eric Zweig's new book, Hockey Hall of Fame True Stories 2. It's a treasure trove of untold tales, bizarre incidents, and captivating trivia that will leave even the most devoted puckhead astounded. The intense rivalries, epic showdowns, and historic clashes that shaped the NHL's early years, it's all in there. Zweig uncovers the true stories that helped shape the sport, ensuring that you will never look at hockey the same way again. Check out Hockey Hall of Fame True Stories 2 on Amazon or wherever fine books are sold. Welcome to another edition of This Dish, a proud member of the Sports History Network. You can find more info and more podcasts at sportshistorynetwork.com. Hey, this is Steve White, your host for This Day in Sports History. Thanks for checking back in. It's July 31st, and on this day in 2000, it was a brief preview of things to come in the NFL. This was a preseason game in Canton, Ohio, better known as the Hall of Fame game, played in conjunction with the NFL's Hall of Fame inductions. On the 29th, San Francisco 49er Joe Montana was one of the 5 inductees and one of 3 49er players elected to the Hall. On the field this day for the Hall of Fame game was the man selected in the most recent draft to be the heir apparent to Montana, Giovanni Carmazzi out of Hofstra. Well, really, to be honest, Steve Young was the heir apparent to Montana, and he proved to be a great replacement once he got his chance. But Young had retired at the end of the '99 season. Now, Carmazzi wasn't coming in as the starter. The Niners had Jeff Garcia as their starting QB at this point, but Carmazzi was the future. He was also one of the Brady Six. If you're not familiar with the Brady Six, well, those were the 6 quarterbacks selected before Tom Brady in the 2000 draft. There was Chad Pennington in the first round, Carmazzi and Chris Redman in the 3rd round, T. Martin in the 5th, and Mark Bulger and Spurgeon Wynn in the 6th round. On the other sideline was the New England Patriots' 6th round draft pick from the 2000 draft, Tom Brady. Brady really wasn't the heir apparent to anything. The Patriots had a solid starter in Drew Bledsoe. Michael Bishop was Bledsoe's backup after being selected in the 7th round of the '99 draft. But Bishop rarely saw the field thanks to Bledsoe. Brady was actually in awe of Bishop, saying at one point, Bishop was one of the best athletes he'd ever seen. And you know who else was making their debut as a Patriot on this day? Head coach Bill Belichick. Well, really, to be honest, he'd been in New England in '96, but then he was an assistant under Bill Parcells. Anyway, to the game that happened on this day, Garcia and Bledsoe got the starts and played a couple of series in the first quarter. Garcia yielded to Carmazzi in the second quarter, and it did not go well. Carmazzi completed just 3 of his 7 passes for 19 yards. Bledsoe handed off the reins of the team to Bishop, who made the most of his time running for a touchdown and throwing for another one. When Brady finally got his chance with 9:36 left in the game, he completed 3 of his 4 pass attempts for 28 yards. So, comparatively speaking, just a little bit better than Carmazzi numbers-wise. The Patriots went on to the 20-0 win in a rather ho-hum game. And if one of the all-time greats had not debuted in this game, it would have been relegated to a file folder never to be reopened. But while this game did not exactly launch Brady into the stratosphere, it seemed to have an adverse effect on Carmazzi. 49ers head coach at the time, Steve Mariucci, said he believed that Carmazzi lost confidence in himself because of his poor performance against the Patriots, sinking down the depth chart in the preseason, and he didn't even make the roster that year due to a lot of what happened on this day in 2000. On this day in 2012, swimmer Michael Phelps became the most decorated Olympic athlete. Phelps won a silver medal in the 200-meter butterfly to start off the day, to tie for the most medals ever won by an Olympian, and then went on to anchor the 4x200-meter freestyle relay to lead the Americans to gold. Phelps secured his 19th Olympic medal, and that passed the Soviet Union's Larissa Latinina's previous record of 18 overall medals she accumulated in women's gymnastics in the 1956, 1960, and 1964 Olympics. Phelps continued to add to his medal tally, competing in the 2016 Rio Olympics, and he finished with 29 overall medals, 23 gold, 3 silver, and 2 bronze. On this day in 1928, 16-year-old American Betty Robinson became the first woman to win gold in an Olympic track event. Now, why did it take so long for an American woman to win gold in track at the Olympics? I mean, the modern Olympics started in 1896. What took 32 years? Well, women's athletics, as track was called then, was not allowed to be part of the Olympic Games until 1928. And it didn't come without a fight, as you might be able to imagine. One, the founder of the modern Olympic Games, a man by the name of Pierre Coubertin, opposed female participation in any Olympic event. He cited the ancient Greeks' prohibition against women participating in anything strenuous. Also, the Pope Pius XI, was vehemently opposed to women being included, and he came out against it when the IOC decided to allow women to participate in the Summer Olympics. Women were considered too frail to run. Well, on this day, the 16-year-old Robinson proved she was anything but weak, running a then world record time of 12.2 seconds to win the 100-meter race and winning the first women's Olympic track gold medal. She was aided by the fact that the two favorites in the event were both disqualified for 2 false starts, shrinking the field considerably. But her performance in this event did not end the controversy of women participating in track events. And I'll have more on what else happened in the 1928 Olympics that prevented women from competing in more track events for decades in the August 2nd edition. On this day in 1972, it was the most exciting play in baseball. It's rare, and Dick Allen happened to do it twice. Allen's Chicago White Sox were in Minnesota taking on the Twins. It was a beautiful day for baseball at the old Met. When Allen came to the plate in the first inning with 2 men on and none out, he laced a Bert Blyleven pitch to center. Twins center fielder Bobby Darwin slipped and the ball bounced over him and rolled to the fence. Allen raced around the bases, the throw was late, and he scored standing up. When he came back to the plate in the 5th inning, Blyleven was still on the bump, and he hit another line drive to center. Darwin couldn't catch up with it, and it rolled to the fence again. And again, the speedy Allen raced around the bases and scored easily. That's 2 inside-the-park home runs in the same game. Now, the feat had been done a few times before, but it had not been done in the majors since 1950, 22 years earlier. Greg Gagne is the most recent player to do it when he hit 2 inside-the-parkers in 1986 with the Twins. For Allen, this was part of an incredible 1972 season for him. This was 2 of his American League leading 37 home runs in a strike-shortened year. He also led the American League in RBIs, on-base percentage, and slugging on his way to winning the American League MVP. In 1938, it was a ruling that may have been the catalyst to the integration of baseball 9 years later. On this day, Kennesaw Mountain Landis suspended New York Yankee Jake Powell. Powell was a decent hitter and a speedy base runner that gave opposing catchers fits on the base paths. He was part of a batting order that included Joe DiMaggio, Lou Gehrig, Tony Lazzeri, and others. He played center field and covered ground well. He was a key man in the Yankees' 1936 World Series victory, hitting .455. But he had a dark heart, and it came out in a most unfortunate way. Back on the 29th, Powell was in the Yankee dugout after taking batting practice, and WGN radio man Bob Elson snagged him for a live radio interview. When Elson inquired what Powell did to stay in shape during the offseason, Powell said he was a policeman, and to stay in shape, he beat black people over the head with his blackjack, except he didn't say black people, he used a racial epithet. There was no radio delay back then, and as soon as Powell's remarks hit the airwaves, the board operator at the station cut the interview. But enough people had heard and called the radio station in protest, and then they called the commissioner's office in Chicago to complain. Elson and station management rushed to apologize. Powell tried to backtrack his statement to reporters, but it was too late. His hateful and ugly words were out of his mouth, and it forced Landis to take some action. And again, Landis was not known for being a progressive sort on racial matters, and that's putting it quite mildly. Landis suspended Powell for 10 days. Landis's tepid statement announcing the suspension gives a little bit more insight into his forced hand, saying, quote, Jake Powell of the New York Yankees made an uncomplimentary reference to a portion of the population. Although the commissioner believes the remark was due more to carelessness than intent, player Powell is suspended for 10 days. End quote. Now, a few things here. Powell was not and had never been a policeman in his hometown of Dayton or anywhere else. What he had been in his life, though, was a bigot, an anti-Semite, a thief, eventually a check-kiter, a cheat, and an all-around bad human. 2 years earlier, he intentionally slammed into Hank Greenberg, a Jewish player with the Detroit Tigers, breaking his wrist. That injury forced Greenberg to the bench for the rest of the season after playing only 12 games. That was when Powell had played with the Washington Senators. When he had been traded to the Yankees, Powell tried to do the same thing to his former teammate, Joe Cool. It caused a brawl between the Yankees and Senators. But the 1938 incident put baseball's race issue front and center for the American public. And according to Chris Lamb, who wrote the book Conspiracy of Silence, Sports Writers and the Long Campaign to Desegregate Baseball, the publicity surrounding the Powell story made it harder for baseball to ignore the issue of race. Unfortunately, Powell's opinions were not atypical. Sports writers rushed to Powell's defense and offered up rationalizations for his despicable comment. Yankee manager Joe McCarthy blamed the media. Sound familiar? And said WGN's rush to apologize started the uproar and cost him a good ball player for 10 days. But the voices of opposition started to grow louder. The Chicago Defender called on Landis to ban Powell from the game. A conservative columnist wrote an op-ed saying, "Baseball has always treated blacks as Adolf Hitler treats the Jews." Protests did follow the Yankees the rest of the season. McCarthy ended up sitting Powell for the remainder of the year after fans threw bottles on the field at Powell during a series in Washington. He was eventually sold to a minor league team on the West Coast in 1939. But the one good thing about Powell's imbecilic remark was that it was credited with starting the slow roll of progress toward baseball's integration 9 years later. And time now for today's non-sports fun fact. Think cherries are expensive? Well, consider this. Cherry farmers keep helicopter pilots on standby to air dry their crop after it rains. If they don't, the fruit is likely to split. That's all for today. And hey, do you need more Steve White in your life? How about a really cool sci-fi thriller? Well, I just voiced and produced the third book in the trilogy, Project Renaissance. Check out any in the series or all of the Project Renaissance stories written by Brian Gates and voiced by me. You can find the Project Renaissance series at audible.com. Have a great day, and I'll see you back here tomorrow on This Day in Sports History. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.
Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, a.k.a. the Football History Dude, and I hope that you enjoyed this recent episode presented by the Sports History Network and we're able to learn some good old-fashioned sports history knowledge nuggets. I started the Sports History Network back in 2020 with the mission to help podcasters find a community of like-minded sports history nerds, as well as helping aspiring podcasters to start their own shows. We have a little bit over 30 shows on the network right now covering all sorts of sports history, but as far as I'm concerned, we're just at the toothpick in the ocean moment, that can't even figure it out because there's so much more coming. We wanted to create the ultimate headquarters for sports yesteryear, starting with Podcast Network and our website, but we're going to continue to move into other mediums as well. And here's the cool part, because we want you to be part of our team. So if you're interested in starting your own podcast, or maybe being a guest on one of our shows, or who knows, maybe even writing an article for us over on the website, seriously, all you got to do is reach out to us on the contact page over at sportshistorynetwork.com. You can be as technologically savvy as a Neanderthal tapping on a stone trying to figure out this whole hieroglyphics thing back in the day. Again, it doesn't matter, because even if you don't understand the whole podcast space, we have a production team that can pretty much help you out with doing everything. All you got to do, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com, head to the contact page, fill it out. That message goes right to me, and I'll reach out to you as soon as I can. But for now, dude, I'm through if you're through.